Hi, welcome back to what is the last podcast. Sorry to say.
Don't sound so sad, David.
Yeah, the last podcast ahead of PE to PLETT. My name's David Knee, I'm the Chief Investment Officer at Prudential, and I'm joined once again by the illustrious Dr. Mike Posthumus. So, roughly 2 weeks to go before PE to PLETT, and we wanted to cover here in this short podcast just some of the things that you need to be thinking about in those last 2 weeks, especially perhaps how you need to be thinking about your training and what's known as the taper. But there are some other issues as well that we're going to cover in terms of some last minute prep that you just need to make sure you've got those boxes ticked. Mike?
Yeah, it is very important to discuss the science of the taper, exactly how you should taper for event. But as David said, it's also very important to take our learnings from the previous podcast where we talked about nutrition. So ensure that you actually have that prepared right now. You should have gone out and purchased what you need for the race. Hopefully you've been training with it. Other important components which we mentioned in last week's podcast, the mechanical issues. So importantly there is ensure that you have a mechanical package. If you haven't already organized that, ensure that you organize that, ensure that you have all your spares. Other components to ensure that you're ready for the race is to potentially book your massage package if you haven't done so already. So all these little things, it's very important to use this time to ensure that you are optimally prepared.
Sure. Yeah, and as we suggested in our previous video where we covered some of the mechanical repairs you might want to do, have a practice, putting a bomb on and giving that a go, making sure that you know the equipment that you've got.
Yes, so watching our video would have hopefully have helped you, but actually practice that. It's very different doing it yourself, especially in a stressful situation. And as mentioned in that video, you don't want that first stressful situation to be during a race. So practice it. Hopefully you've got an old bomb you can play, try and break the seal, ensure that you know how your bomb adapter works, and all other tools that you're carrying along. It's pointless carrying it if you don't know how it works.
Oh, absolutely, that's right. And so, let's turn to the issue of training, Mike, and the taper. Because, for those that have been following your program or people who've been doing their own thing, what should they be thinking about? How do they need to kind of adapt that in the run-up to the actual event itself?
So firstly, the taper is very important because this is the period where we actually realize and actually see the fruits of all the hard work we've been doing. So during our normal training weeks, we might not have seen our progress because of the fatigue we're carrying from the training. We have all hopefully been training very hard for this event, and you might not have realized this yet. So the taper period is there for your body to actually start recovering, so that you can realize the gains you've made, so that when you start the race, you are in the best shape that you've ever been in. So the key points of a taper is you want to decrease your volume by 60 to 80%. So this is the biggest mistake everybody makes. People think taper is rest and you should just do nothing. That's possibly the biggest mistake you can make. You shouldn't do nothing. Right. Doing nothing will just make you not realize your hard work. It'll make you lose your hard work, and you'll start off the event feeling really sluggish. So that's why you want to decrease the volume slightly, and when I talk volume, I talk hours. So you want to decrease your hours by 60 to 80%. So if you were doing 10 hours a week as your big weeks in the preceding weeks, you want to be doing 6 to 8 in the last 7 to 10 days. 6 to 8 hours per week in the last 7 to 10 days. Right. So that's how you want to decrease your volume. But that isn't, you don't just want to decrease your volume and only ride easy. You have to maintain your intensity. Right. So research has shown that the most effective taper, you still do intensity. So those of you that have been following the programs would see that the taper is automatically built into that program. So a classical taper strategy would be to, now you don't have to go zone 5 or go flat out. Right. So a classical taper strategy would be to go 3 to 4 days before the event and do 4 4-minute intervals in zone 4. Now remember, zone 4 should be reasonably easy, At a push, you should be able to do that for a prolonged period, for 40 minutes to 60 minutes. So that is the sort of intensity we're talking about. So you just want to do 4 by 4 minutes in zone 4, right. 3 to 4 days out. Then the day before the event, and people don't often understand that, it's important to just open the legs up, and these are called openers. And my recommendation there, and the session put into your training programs, would be 4 by 2 minutes, same zone 4. So not flat out at all, but it should be slightly harder than moderate. So you want to do 4 intervals, 2-minute duration, and during between an hour and 90-minute cycle with those intervals in the middle. That'll be a classical sort of taper strategy leading into the event.
Right, okay. So, I mean, the biggest mistake sounds like somebody could make is just to think that they, you know, they should spend the week before the event just riding, you know, zone 2 and taking it super easy.
Exactly. So that's panic strikes. People realize, ooh, this event is coming up. And now they just want to do nothing because they want to recover and ensure that they're fresh enough. But that is not the optimal strategy. So the biggest mistake, do not just rest and do not just ride easy. Decrease your volume and ensure that you maintain your intensity.
Right, okay. So I think that's, yeah, I mean, certainly that's useful. I have to say, personally, I've often gone into events kind of worried that my fitness level isn't there, and so continue to train really hard right up into the event.
Yeah, that's another mistake people make. And in doing that, you're just going to then enter the event with some fatigue already built up. So during the event, of course, everybody's going to be accumulating fatigue, and majority of individuals are probably going to get worse and worse as the days go by, as the fatigue accumulates. So you don't want to start the event already being fatigued.
Right. Sure. What role does sleep play in the kind of taper week? I mean, we did touch on it before when we talked about training and the importance of getting sleep. Is that the same now, or?
So I might have mentioned the 3 pillars of recovery. So recovery is very important. So we want to ensure that all 3 pillars of recovery are optimized. Now, the 3 pillars of recovery is obviously your training, which is taper. So your taper has to be optimal. Then sleep. Now this is obviously a critically important period to ensure that you are recovering optimally, because you want to realize the hard work you've put in. You don't want additional work stress, etc. So you have to ensure that sleep is optimal. So sleep becomes even more important during this phase. Right. So I always try and remind athletes, ensure that you do not have 1 or 2 nights in the preceding week, hopefully not more, hopefully none, nights where you get to bed very late, wake up very early. Right. Hopefully by this stage you would know your sleep pattern. Hopefully you're getting close to the recommended 8 hours of sleep per night. During the preceding 7 days, aim for 8 hours of sleep per night. And plan this. So the best way to get 8 hours is to use the app on your phone that you can play around with the dial. Know that if you have to get up at 5 a.m., know when you have to get to bed to ensure that you're still getting your 8 hours. So you've got to plan your sleep to ensure that you're getting enough sleep. Right. The 3rd pillar of recovery would be nutrition. And nutrition is also very important to talk around during this week, because in the past or historically, people have always talked about carbo loading. Now, most recent research has shown us that the traditional carbo loading approach isn't necessarily required. So it isn't necessarily required for 2 reasons, because you can automatically get to that end point, which is full fuel stores, simply through reducing your training, which you're automatically going to be doing in your training. And all really that's required from a carbo loading perspective is the 2 days preceding the event. Ensure that all meals are well balanced and that you're eating carbohydrates at all meals throughout the day. There's generally recommended a sort of 6 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram body weight. But if you are just eating carbohydrates in all your meals throughout your day and ensure that you're not restricting food or restricting carbohydrates with a reduced training load, you'll automatically get to the event with full glycogen stores, full fuel stores, and that's all you want.
Okay, so that's kind of helpful, because you know, people actually, you know, there's nothing really special they need to do with their diet beyond ensuring that they kind of continue with a kind of regular balanced diet that includes a reasonable amount of carbs.
Yes, so include, if you generally eat lower carb, ensure healthy, balanced, good amounts of carbohydrates with each meal.
It doesn't seem like there's much real advantage in absolutely stuffing your face with massive bowl of pasta the night before and thinking that that's going to make a big difference. So.
Yeah, the biggest problem with that is the additional weight gain. So in the short term, now this isn't getting fat. If you eat too much and big amounts of carbohydrates, you'll generally hold a lot of water, and you want to try and avoid that. You also want to avoid the gastric issues of just having that bulk in you when you start the event. And that is why the strategy of simply eating balanced meals without having these big plates full, which aren't really required,
sure,
is the preferred method.
Okay, thanks for that. What are the other things that I guess you know, people need to be thinking about perhaps just before the event? We touched on the issue of trying to make sure that your bike's in good condition. You know, get your bike to your local bike shop, get it serviced, and then make sure you've taken it out for a ride. Presumably that's...
Yes, so hopefully that all is taken care of. In the few days before the race, you really just want to decrease stress. And the best way to decrease stress is to ensure that you've planned ahead of time so that you're not running around last minute, day before the race, running around looking for a tube, running around looking for a bomb or bomb adapter, or running around looking for your nutrition. That's why I mentioned that it's important just to ensure that you have planned everything, and you want to plan everything so that you reduce stress. Because quite often the day before is completely frantic, highly stressful, trying to get ready for the event, and that is not going to help your performance.
Sure.
So just try your best to decrease stress. That might even be ensuring that your work, because we all work jobs, 9 to 5, most of us, ensure that your work is taken care of and that you're not having to stay up the night before trying to meet deadlines and having to work throughout the event. Hopefully you can get to the event, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the experience and race your bike to the best of your ability.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think, I've ridden PE to Plett twice, and, you know, it's a small event, there are 200 riders, you know, it's a pretty chilled environment, so, you know, it's great if you can kind of enjoy you know, that when you finished your ride and you've come into the race village and you can just kind of chill. So, you know, yeah, I think, you know, there's some great food on offer afterwards. Clearly you need to kind of be thinking about replenishing while you're actually in the event itself, replenishing your kind of nutritional stores. Anything that's worth saying about that in terms of, you know, how you're fueling yourself actually during the 4 days of PE to Plett?
We have already talked about fueling on the bike. Sure. Off the bike, obviously we have to try and fill our stores. This is a stage race, so you need to be eating for the coming days. Right. So again, carbohydrates are essential to ensure that you are filling up your carbohydrate stores. So again, you're going to be eating on the bike, coming off the bike immediately afterwards, try and get in a recovery drink. That'll already help try and offset that debt that you've created on the bike. And then lunchtime and supper and hopefully snacks in between. Again, you're going to have to eat a lot. Look for carbohydrate-rich sources. Look for your potatoes, the rices, and some of the other starches that'll help you replenish your glycogen stores, because it is going to be very important to get enough carbohydrates so that you can try and get your glycogen levels, your muscle glycogen levels, back up to the level they were before you started the day, so that you don't start off the next day in debt already.
Yeah. And I mean, PE to Plett does, I mean, there's as much free wine and beer as you can drink at PE to Plett, which is, you know, it's a draw for some people. As a source of carbs, presumably it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Unfortunately, with my science hat on and not my social hat, I've got to say that it's a big no-no. And the reason alcohol is a big no-no is obviously it does affect various systems across our body. It affects hormonals, or your hormonal system. It'll affect your sleep, and thereby it'll interfere with your recovery. So I'm not saying one beer will affect you, but if you go and have several beers, it will affect your recovery and it will eventually add up. However, there is that balance between the social aspect as well. And at the end of the day, we are out there at a mountain bike event to enjoy ourselves. Yep. So don't feel that you can't have one beer, but try and keep it to one, David.
Yeah, well, you know me. I'll be reaching for the second or the third, so I'll have to hold myself back. Okay, thanks, Mike. I think that's useful. Hopefully you can get yourself prepared and de-stressed, have everything kind of lined up and packed, and be ready to go. Come to PE PLETT, have a great time. Hope you found this series of podcasts really useful, or at least kind of fun to watch. Mike, thanks very much for being part of that.
No, thank you very much everyone for listening, and as David said, I just hope that everybody learns something, even if it is something small, and hopefully we'll be back next year giving similar advice.
Yeah, thanks very much, all the best, have a great ride, see you on the start line on the 6th of Feb. Yeah, give me a fist bump and tell me what you thought.